Hey, what is up guys? It's Lewpac back with another Albion Online video for you. And today we've got a super cool video. We're going to be taking a look at the upcoming balance changes that are going to be hitting Albion Online. This is from the NDA balance thread that you can find on the forums. These are not in the game yet, but it's a preview of what's to come. And we're getting to the point now where these changes are locked in. We're expecting them possibly next week, maybe a little bit later, but there's some game-changing stuff here for a lot of classes, so make sure you take note if it affects you. And of course, this will always shake up the 5v5 meta, the ZVZ meta, and many other things, especially with the corrupted dungeons coming. Balancing is a big issue as we look forward to the corrupted dungeons. So let's take a look at what is in store so far. As I said, these are subject to change, but they're pretty close to locked in now. So Arcane Staffs first are getting a new ability called Mimic. It's going to replace Arcane Purge, and it temporarily gives you the W slot ability of a different player. So you target a player and you steal one of their W abilities. The good thing is this can be used on friends and enemies from what I've seen. So that means that you're not reliant on the enemy having a certain something. You can build your own composition in a team fight, and you always know that you can steal a certain ability off the player. You can't choose, you don't get their ability, you just get one of the W's that they have access to. So for example, if you steal another Arcane Staff, you would keep getting Mimic, but Axes will give you Raging Blades, Bow will give you Ray of Light, Crossbows will give you Noise Eraser, Cursed Arse will give you Armor Piercer, and so on and so forth. So there's some cool combos here. Potentially, like you can have an arcane tank now with snare charge. If you play a one-hand mace DPS on your comp, you can play the one-hand mace as the sort of stalker jacket leather DPS and turn your arcane into a snare charging purge machine. There's a ton of options there to be done here, but the issue is you've got to decide what role you're filling, and you need to have the right guy on your team to get the right W as well. So it does have a lot of applications, but it will require you to build a comp around the arcane. But hopefully we see a lot of interesting builds and setups come up of this. I'm sure some of the top players have already theory crafted what they can do with this, and I'm excited to see how it progresses for Arcane, because they're definitely overdue for a bit of love. Bows then, we did hear that SPI were a bit worried about the kite potential of bows and their power in 1v1s, particularly the Warbow just kiting infinitely. So Frost Shot now has a small cast time, Ray of Light got a cooldown increase, and Magic Arrow gets a stand time increase but a damage increase versus mob. So anybody looking to solo dungeon level Warbows is in for a treat with the new Magic Arrow. However, adding a stand time to this, I'm always a favour of reducing stand times because they make the game feel smoother, they make it play nicer and feel more responsive. The issue with Warbows is they can kite so well, so adding a stand time forces them to stay still to cast the ability, and that means that people that are trying to chase them can close the gap by a little bit more. So it's not a complete destruction nerf, but it's definitely a step in the right direction to the kiting power of Warbows. Daggers we talked about a lot in the meta snapshot. Obviously the Spectre Jacket problem has been resolved by the recent Spectre Jacket nerf, which has already hit. But Ghost Strike is going to go from 3 seconds to 2 seconds invisibility, and you can no longer cast while invisible. That will now cancel your invisibility. So the survivability of Death Givers has definitely been impacted. And while they'll still be a powerful tool in 5v5, this may well pave the way for other things like the broadsword and the halberd to come back in. Holy Staffs, this is probably the biggest change of all right now. This has just been added, so I don't know if this is finalized yet, but basically the Flash Heal meta is going away because Flash Heal is being removed. Yep. The go-to healing spell for the spammer jammers is being removed from the game. They're getting a new Q ability called Holy Flash, which essentially, if you've ever played a Frost Staff, it's basically the holy equivalent of Ice Shard, and I think henceforth I'll refer to it as Holy Shard because it's so similar. It drops a heal out in an area, it's got 0 cooldown, and it takes 0.8 seconds to cast. Very good with a Obsessive Burst, speed, aggressive caster, stuff like that. For the speed, it heals 40 40 to 5 allies, heals for 40 up to 5 allies in a 4 meter radius. I believe that's supposed to say. Just for reference, Ice Shard is 3 meters, so it's a bit bigger than an Ice Shard. And the more allies you heal, the stronger it is. So each additional ally ups the healing by 10% up to a max of 50, I assume. So this will be good in probably both ZVZ and potentially in 5v5s if you've got good synergy. But you don't really want to clump for heals, because if you clump for heals, you clump for damage. In a ZVZ it could work because you're bound to be hitting 5 guys anyway, but it's a little bit odd. We'll see how it plays out. It could be good, it could be rubbish. We'll have to wait and see, but I'm interested to see if it fits in. I definitely think it will have applications, but I'm most interested in seeing where this is going to steer the healing meta. Are people going to continue to play flash heal spammer jammers even though they're going to be removed? Or are they going to start practicing something else? We'll see, especially with the high level GVGs coming up this weekend. We'll see what happens. Smite becomes a Q ability from a W, similar to what they did with Thorns on the nature. Doesn't really seem like a big deal. We'll see if it has any impact, but Smite is only used for PvE anyway most of the time. There's no such thing really as a DPS holy. Sacred Pulse has been reworked. It's no longer a heal over time. It's now an instant AoE heal that also does damage. So technically you could have a Smite Sacred Pulse holy that has 2 damage abilities. Could it work? Maybe. Is it likely to work? Probably not. That said, the hit delay has been reduced to 0 and the stand time has been increased, and we'll see how this ability works. Again, Holy Blessing to cancel knockbacks, or the knockback of Sacred Pulse are the go-to spells, so it's definitely going to be interesting seeing some damage from this as well. The unlock order has been changed as well, so they've just changed slightly the order you get some spells in. It's still level 100 for Resurrection, you don't get Holy Orb till 70, and it just has a slight tweak to it. And Self-Healing Sickness is getting a big change. So if you spam cast on yourself too much, you get Self-Healing Sickness, which gives you a 40% healing reduction, which lasts 18 seconds. A big deal, and you'll also find this on the Nature Staff as well. Thorns now do 56 damage. They do have a slight increase on attack damage and a slight reduction on reflect damage. The total damage remains the same, however. Revitalize has been nerfed. It now has a delay before the first tick, and being hit now is doubly effective at reducing it. So they're trying to get rid of nature ratting and solo nature spamming. There's a lot of nerfs there. The top tier tanking weapon, the Black Monk Staff, is getting an increase to the hit interval on Fatal Blade. This is the time it takes for a stack to be applied. So basically it's going to stack slower, and the quicker you get out of it, the less stacks you're going to have. This is important because it was very, very easy for the Fatal Blade to get high amount of stacks and completely nerf people's DPS, especially if they're stuck in the center of it. This gives DPS a bit more of a fighting chance, and I like this nerf a lot, because it doesn't destroy Fatal Blade and remove it from the meta, but it makes other things on par with it. It makes it a little bit less, just better than everything else. Perpetual Energy on the Royal Cow is going to be reduced from 15 to 12 seconds. Big deal for all spamming classes, big deal for hardcore expedition runners, and of course the spammer jammers, but the spammer jammers now potentially going to be running the new Holy Shard, not the generous heal, the flash heal, sorry. So I don't know if it'll affect those guys. Big blow for Frost players though. Frost is already in a pretty bad place with the prevalence of mage robes. Having 3 seconds off Perpetual Energy is kind of bad. Hunter's Hood is also getting nerfed. The 100% reflect is now going to be 70% reflect. So it's a little bit less obnoxious, a little bit less one-shot yourselfy, especially for things like Quarterstaff Demons in 2v2 Hellgates, one-shot crossbows in the open world, those things that kill themselves instantly. Bit more of a fighting chance against the Hunter's Hood, but personally I don't have a problem with Hunter's Hood. I think it's an obvious ability, you should see it coming and you should be ready to react to it, definitely. Mage robes then, we just talked about those, getting a slight nerf from 5 seconds to 4 seconds, and the Koltes Robe is pretty much going in the bin as an offensive or like clutch ability. It now just functions as a reset. You're no longer physically immune. You do get bonus resistances during it, but you do still take damage. You lose duration when you take any damage. There's a delay before the first tick, and it ticks every 1 second. So you do heal the same overall, although not quite, because instead of going 3 to 6, it's 3 to 5. So the total is slightly less. You lose duration when taking damage, and you're no longer physical immune. So this functions as like a reset when you're out of danger now, as opposed to a clutch denial and reset in the face of melee DPS. I think this is going to see its applications dropped heavily. It will still have a few applications, but it will not be the 1v1 and 2v2 powerhouse that we've seen before. It's definitely a change. The self-ignition for the Spectre's Jacket, this has already come in, where it's actually doing 3% of max health, so it may get changed to 2 if they feel they over-nerfed it. But also the auras no longer stack. So that's going to mean that running tons of them in ZVZ is not an effective strategy anymore. And we're not going to have a million of what people are calling the Jesus build just running over us. Then we have Requite, which is the Armor of Valor's ability. The Armor of Valor, something I talked about when it first came out. Kind of pony, not really usable anywhere except for very specific situations. Instead of a healing reduction now, the Reflect is going to silence people for 2 seconds and slow them. It doesn't do a dot, it just does straight damage, but now the duration is only 3 seconds. And the fact that you have to channel it is why this kind of sucks. Having to sort of hold the ability on and not use any other spells is kind of naff. And having a 3-second window to get value out of it, I mean, this just functions as like a little mini demon helm, which, are you really going to lose Judicator Bubble or Enfeeble Aura to get this ability? Probably not. Still not playable. Maybe in ZVZ, silencing a ton of guys in ZVZ all of a sudden could be something, but you're not going to want too many of them. We'll see if it's played, of course, once the changes come in. People may find a use for it, people may experiment with it, but I still don't think it's great. For an Avalonian tier artifact, I'm not impressed. The Demon Boots, finally, the obnoxious Demon Boots, being able to sprint halfway across the planet every 30 seconds, is getting nerfed to 60 seconds. So now it's like a one-shot escape, which would be good for the open world, but in 2v2 Hellgates, it means these endless kiting builds, you're definitely going to have more of a chance of catching them. A few changes to potions as well. Sticky Potions getting a buff, lower cooldown, faster projectile speed, and they don't get to see where it's going to land until it's landed. So again, these used to be the meta in GVG. They're somewhat useful in open world in ZVZ, not crazy useful, but I have seen people use them. Maybe this will help though. I'd like to see it balanced as much as possible. And Invisibility Potions now give you a damage debuff, which lasts 2 seconds longer than the Invis, but the Invis is increased by 1 second. So the reason for this is to stop people like stealthing in with an Invis pot and just like brimstoning huge groups of people. The damage debuff is like stops that surprise attack element, which makes sense. So a slight nerf to Invis, but a buff to people that use it for its intended purpose. And finally, some big changes to ZVZ. They're trying to stop the one-shottiness of ZVZ. They're trying to stop like the insta-gibbing entire Zergs, things like Weepings, things like Galas, things that just don't make it that fun. Because in the middle of a proper ZVZ, 100 versus 100, 5 ungilded, undebuffed Gala guys running into the middle of your Zerg is just so unfun. You're already trying to fight a 100-man force in a face-to-face confrontation. Dealing with 5 Galas is not practical. And then when they blow up your entire backline, it's just super toxic and not fun for anyone except the Gala clappers. So they're actually lowering the AoE escalation by 3%. So that's a 30% decrease. The maximum bonus is going down by 30% total as well. And the maximum ability damage buff you can receive is going down from 150 to 100%. So the overall cap of potential burst damage goes down a lot, which hopefully will give people a fighting chance against these boom clappers and their crazy gear. So we're going to see big changes to the GVG meta. We're going to see changes to how ZVZs play out. We're going to see changes to 2v2s, and of course, what's going to be happening in the upcoming corrupted dungeons. So a ton of stuff to digest. There may be a few little changes other than this, like before this actually drops. But if there's anything major worth reporting, of course, I'll bring it to you here on my YouTube channel. So don't forget to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear your comments below, guys. If you have any feedback on things you want me to cover, or if you've got any thoughts on these changes, where do you think this is going to take the meta? What's going to be in the bin and what's going to be causing you to win? I'd love to hear it. But I hope you enjoyed the video nonetheless. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.